Audiobook Top, your new home for the finest selection of audiobooks available anywhere.
Ah, dear reader or listener, come closer. Tonight we embark on a curious journey, asking a question as old as humanity: can you truly judge a book by its cover? In a world awash with fleeting glimpses and swift assumptions, where reputation precedes reality, this query remains as pertinent today as in Regency England's bustling ballrooms. We speak, of course, of Jane Austen's Pride and Prejudice and the very first impressions that set its indelible narrative in motion. Picture, if you will, the sleepy village of Longbourn, its quiet rhythm about to be delightfully shattered. News spreads like wildfire. Netherfield Park has a tenant. Not just any, but Mr. Charles Bingley, a young man of considerable fortune. His cover, as it were, was a beacon of promise: handsome, amiable, with an income sparking keen interest in every mother of unmarried daughters. He was a book everyone clamored to open, a light-hearted romance. With him came his even wealthier friend, Mr. Fitzwilliam Darcy. Darcy's cover was another matter entirely. At the first assembly ball, the stage for crucial introductions, the contrast was stark. Mr. Bingley danced, smiled, and projected easy charm. He was the universally acclaimed bestseller, effortlessly engaging, pages promising only delight. But Mr. Darcy, Mr. Darcy! He stood aloof, a formidable, leather-bound tome, whose presence declared, "Approach not," for within these pages lay only the sternest pronouncements. He danced but once, spoke little, and, most damningly, refused Elizabeth Bennet as a partner, deeming her tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me. Our spirited Elizabeth Bennet was no stranger to quick wit or sharp observation, a discerning reader capable of dissecting character with precision. But even the cleverest can fall prey to a cover's allure, or its repellent nature. When Darcy slighted her own cover, that of a vivacious, intelligent young woman, was ruffled. She judged him instantly proud, insufferable, his interior surely matching his exterior arrogance. The first lines of his story, she believed, revealed the villain, and she sealed the book shut with a decisive snap. Yet life, like a finely crafted novel, rarely reveals truths in opening chapters. Darcy, for all his apparent haughtiness, possessed quiet integrity, a loyal heart, and depth unseen by the casual observer. His pride was a shield, his reserved manner a misunderstanding. Elizabeth, for all her keen intellect, allowed initial hurt and local gossip to cloud her judgment. Her swift conclusion, her ready disdain, became prejudice, blinding her to nuance. She had judged his book, not by content, but by its stark, uninviting binding. Muritan society, too, was guilty of this shortcut. Fortune, family, appearance, bold fonts on the cover. Character, integrity, true affection, subtle subplots often overlooked. How many hearts misjudged, how many connections lost, because the cover didn't appeal, or because first pages seemed too dense, too unyielding. The Bennets, driven by superficial advantageous matches, embodied this societal fixation on external worth. So as we delve deeper, remember the true story of a person, like a book's true genius, unfolds not in a cover's fleeting glance, but in the patient, immersive journey through its heart and soul. Initial prejudice, snap judgment, compelling allure of surface charm, these are but first brushstrokes on a vast, intricate canvas. In Pride and Prejudice, few lessons are learned with greater difficulty, or with more profound, transformative consequences. This chapter, my friends, is merely the intriguing prelude to a much richer, more complex tale of discovery. Gather round, my friends, and let us embark on a journey. Not through distant lands or fantastical realms, but into the quiet, often tumultuous landscape of the human heart, guided by the incomparable compass of Jane Austen. My own path to her brilliance, I confess, was not a straight one. For many years, like some unwitting traveler, I circled her works with a kind of polite apprehension, convinced they were merely relics of a bygone era, full of bonnets, balls, and an impenetrable web of social graces I felt ill-equipped to untangle. I imagined drawing room dramas, all stifled emotions and demure glances, utterly divorced from the vibrant, often messy reality of my own modern existence. Oh, how deliciously wrong I was. My true initiation, as it often is, began with a whisper, a suggestion from a friend who knew my secret penchant for quick wit and biting observation, urging me to just try Pride and Prejudice I approached it with the wary skepticism of someone expecting a polite handshake, but secretly hoping for a fiery debate. And then, a miracle. From the very first line, it is a truth universally acknowledged, that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. I felt a jolt. not of quaintness, but of startling, almost audacious wit. Austen, I quickly realized, wasn't just observing her society, she was dissecting it with the precision of a surgeon and the irony of a seasoned satirist. Elizabeth Bennet, with her lively mind and refusal to be cowed by convention, immediately became a kindred spirit. Her sparkling exchanges, her quick judgments both right and gloriously wrong, her fierce independence, she was no demure wallflower, but a woman who dared to think, to question, and most importantly, to feel deeply. And Mr. Darcy, Mr. Darcy, my initial disdain for his proud, haughty demeanor slowly, wonderfully, transformed into something akin to admiration as his layers were peeled back, revealing a man burdened by expectations, yet capable of profound change and genuine affection. What truly captivated me, though, was not merely the exquisite love story, but the profound human drama unfolding beneath the surface of elegant prose. Austen's genius lies in her ability to illuminate the timeless struggles that transcend centuries, the relentless pursuit of security, the delicate balance between personal desire and societal expectation, the agony of misjudgment, and the profound journey of self-discovery that often requires us to shed our own prejudices before we can truly see others, or indeed, ourselves. Through the witty banter and the intricate dance of social etiquette, Austen explored universal themes that resonate just as powerfully today: class distinctions, gender roles, the complexities of family dynamics, the illusion of reputation, and the enduring quest for a partnership built on mutual respect and understanding. Her characters, for all their Regency attire, are startlingly real, their flaws and virtues rendered with such honesty that they feel like people we've known, people whose dilemmas mirror our own. My journey with Jane Austen, particularly through the corridors of Longbourn, Netherfield, and Pemberley, has been one of constant revelation. It taught me that true strength often lies in quiet observation and sharp intellect, that passion can simmer beneath the most composed exterior, and that the greatest romances are often born not of immediate attraction, but of a shared intellectual vibrancy and a willingness to overcome initial misunderstandings. It has shown me that the human condition, in its joys and its follies, remains remarkably consistent, no matter the era. And so, it is with this deep, personal appreciation that I invite you now to join me, to delve not just into the plot of Pride and Prejudice but into its very heart and soul, to explore the brilliance of Austen's craft, the enduring power of her characters, and the timeless wisdom embedded in her narrative. This is more than just a commentary, it is a shared expedition, a return to a beloved text with fresh eyes, eager to uncover new insights and rekindle old admirations. Let us walk together through the pages, and I promise you, like me, you will find something truly extraordinary. Chapter 1. A truth universally acknowledged. Gather close, for there are tales that must be told, truths so self-evident they scarcely need uttering, yet upon them rests the very framework of our world. And so, our story begins with one such universal acknowledgement, a profound, unshakable certainty that echoes through every drawing room and whispers in every fashionable street. It is a truth universally acknowledged, that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Indeed, so deeply ingrained is this conviction that when such a man first takes up residence in a neighborhood, he is instantly deemed the rightful property of someone or other of his neighbor's daughters. And it was with this very truth firmly clasped to her bosom that Mrs. Bennet, of Longbourn, burst forth one morning into her husband's study, her mind a veritable tempest of excitement. "My dear Mr. Bennet," she exclaimed, her voice barely containing its tremors of delight, "have you heard? Have you heard that Netherfield Park is at last?" Mr. Bennet, a man of profound and often bewildering wit, merely looked up from his newspaper with an air of studied indifference. "I have not, my dear." "What is it now? Has somebody died?" he inquired, his eyes twinkling ever so faintly above the page. "Oh, you take such pleasure in vexing me!" she cried, tapping her foot with impatience. "You must know, Mr. Bennet, that I am thinking of nothing but its occupant. A single gentleman of large fortune, no doubt. And with 5 daughters, you can hardly imagine my feelings." Her gaze was fixed on him with an intensity that promised no retreat. "Is he married or single?" Mr. Bennet asked, feigning a sudden interest. "Oh, single, my dear, to be sure. A single man of large fortune, 4,000 or 5,000 a year. What a fine thing for our girls!" Mr. Bennet permitted himself a small, dry smile. "How so? How can it affect them?" "My dear Mr. Bennet," she retorted, her voice rising in pitch, "how can you be so tiresome? You must know that I am thinking of marrying one of them." She paused, as if awaiting a chorus of agreement from the very air around her. "You must visit him as soon as he comes." "I see no occasion for that. You and the girls may go, or you may send them by themselves, which perhaps will be still better, for as you are as handsome as any of them, Mr. Bingley might like you the best of the party." Mrs. Bennet threw up her hands in exasperation. "My dear, you flatter me. I have not been handsome these 20 years, and besides, consider the impropriety. We cannot introduce ourselves. The first visit must be from you. It is entirely out of the question for us to go without an introduction." Her conviction was absolute, her logic, to her, unassailable. For the next hour she continued her passionate, often rambling, discourse on the absolute necessity of Mr. Bennet calling on this mysterious Mr. Bingley. She painted vivid pictures of their daughters' futures, of balls and assemblies, of advantageous matches. She spoke of Jane's beauty, of Elizabeth's quick wit, of Kitty's coughs and Mary's diligent practice at the piano, all in her mind, equally valid reasons for Mr. Bingley to fall desperately in love. Mr. Bennet, meanwhile, offered only the most laconic replies, occasionally interjecting a perfectly timed, sardonic remark that would send his wife spiraling into fresh paroxysms of frustration. "You are resolved to have him visit, then?" Mr. Bennet finally asked, his gaze settling upon her with a peculiar glint. "I am, indeed, Mr. Bennet. How can you ask such a foolish question?" she declared, quite beside herself. "What a triumph it would be!" "Well, my dear," he said, folding his newspaper with an almost imperceptible flourish, a hint of amusement playing about his lips, "you may set your heart at ease. For I have already visited Mr. Bingley." The effect was instantaneous. Mrs. Bennet, who had been bracing herself for another hour of relentless persuasion, stared at him, her mouth agape, her eyes wide with disbelief, and then slowly a dawning triumphant delight. You have visited him! Oh, Mr. Bennet, you are the best man in the world!" And so, with her expectations not just met, but gloriously exceeded, Mrs. Bennet launched into a fresh, ecstatic monologue about the imminent arrival of Mr. Bingley, and the dazzling prospects awaiting her beloved daughters. The game, it seemed, had already begun. Chapter 2. The Meryton Ball. First impressions. The Meryton assembly rooms on that fateful evening pulsed with anticipation. Carriages crunched on the gravel, disgorging bedecked occupants, each family carrying its own current of hope and anxiety. For the Bennets, this was a grand strategic maneuver, orchestrated by a mother whose every thought revolved around the felicitous settlement of her 5 daughters. Mrs. Bennet, a creature of boundless nervous energy, swept her gaze across the arriving throng, mentally cataloging suitors and rivals. Her eldest, Jane, radiant in gentle beauty, moved with unconscious grace. Elizabeth, with lively eyes and quick wit, observed with a discerning amusement often escaping her family. The air held its breath as rumor solidified into certainty. Mr. Bingley had arrived, accompanied by his 2 fashionable sisters and a gentleman of formidable aspect. Charles Bingley was everything Meryton wished: a handsome young man of agreeable countenance, with a lively, unreserved air that bespoke good humor and openness. He seemed delighted with everything and everyone, a charm that instantly captivated the room. He danced every dance, never appearing bored. His attention, early, was unmistakably drawn to Miss Jane Bennet, with whom he danced 4 sets, sending a thrill of hopeful speculation through the assembly and Mrs. Bennet's heart. But Mr. Bingley brought another, a Mr. Darcy, whose presence was a study in contrasts. A man of striking height and undeniable handsomeness, with an aristocratic distinction that might have been universally admired. Yet, his manner proved his undoing, Meryton's immediate and unwavering judgment of him. Mr. Darcy was perceived as proud, reserved, and utterly disdainful of the company. His immense fortune, 10,000 a year, initially whispered with awe, quickly became another indictment. For all his wealth, he danced but once with Mrs. Hurst, Bingley's sister, spending the remainder aloof, judging with scarcely concealed disdain. This stark difference formed the core of the evening's discourse, shaping indelible first impressions. While Bingley's geniality earned him universal admiration, Darcy's pride swiftly alienated every soul. He was deemed the proudest, most disagreeable man, a verdict delivered with rare unanimity. His unwillingness to mingle, his refusal to be pleased, solidified public prejudice. During a brief lull, as Bingley attempted to persuade his friend, Darcy cemented his reputation. "Come, Darcy," Bingley had urged, "I hate to see you standing about by yourself. I dare say there are some very agreeable girls here." Darcy, glancing indifferently, replied with chilling dismissiveness, "You are dancing with the only handsome girl in the room." He added, with careless contempt, "I have no inclination to call upon others. I would not wish to give my hand to any young woman slighted by other men." He then fixed his gaze upon Elizabeth, declaring, "She is tolerable, but not handsome enough to tempt me. I am in no humor at present to give consequence to young ladies who are slighted by other men." Elizabeth, sharp-eared and spirited, overheard every word. Yet, rather than wounded, she merely recounted the anecdote with humorous relish, remarking, "I could easily forgive his pride, if he had not mortified mine." Her amusement was a testament to her resilient spirit, a refusal to be diminished by arrogance. But the seeds were sown. Overt pride, casually expressed contempt, left a lasting mark. The Meryton ball concluded not merely as a dance, but as a crucible of character, forging immediate alliances and instant animosities, predicated upon the treacherous ground of first impressions. The stage was now set, not just for acquaintance, but for a profound exploration of the prejudices these initial judgments would inspire. Chapter 3. The Bennet family dynamic. The Longbourn drawing room, alive with its peculiar, familiar rhythm. Mrs. Bennet, a study in excitable anticipation, paces the floor. Mr. Bennet, book in hand, observes the unfolding domestic drama with dry amusement. Their 5 daughters, Jane, Elizabeth, Mary, Kitty, and Lydia, watch Mrs. Bennet lament to think Mr. Bingley is at Netherfield, a single man of large fortune, and you, Mr. Bennet, remain as stagnant as a puddle. You refuse to make his acquaintance. Mr. Bennet, without lowering his book, "My dear, my inaction, I assure you, is a profound amusement. Your vexation is quite diverting." Elizabeth, smiling, "Papa finds sport in Mamma's distress." Jane, softly, "Perhaps Mr. Bingley desires solitude." Mrs. Bennet, ignoring Jane, flustered, "Nonsense! He desires a wife, and we, his nearest neighbors, are denied an introduction. It is an affront." Mr. Bennet, slowly lowering his book, a glint in his eye. "You consider it an affront? Well, I confess I have committed a grave error. I have already called on Mr. Bingley." A stunned silence. Mrs. Bennet freezes. The girls exchange glances. Mrs. Bennet, a gasp, then a shriek of delight. You have! Oh, Mr. Bennet, my nerves! You will be the death of me! How? My clever husband! I knew you would not fail us!" Mr. Bennet, calmly, "It was yesterday." A customary civility. He was perfectly civil. Mrs. Bennet, beaming, bustling, "Civil! Of course! Now he must return the call! We shall invite him to dinner! The girls must be presented! He will be enchanted by Jane, I am certain! And Lizzie too, for she is quite as pretty!" Elizabeth, amused, to Mr. Bennet, "So, Papa, the scheme was in motion. We are but pawns." Mr. Bennet, a wry smile. "Indeed, Lizzie. Your mother's strategies are often comprehensive." Mrs. Bennet, clapping, absorbed in plans. "Now, girls, our dresses! Our bonnets! What a triumph! I shall tell Lady Lucas!" Lydia, giggling, with Kitty, "Perhaps he will bring handsome officers." Mary, solemnly, "One must not presume. Propriety dictates a measured approach." Mr. Bennet, rising, stretching, a twinkle in his eye. "My official duties in this crusade are concluded. I shall retreat to my library, far from the joyous clamor." Mrs. Bennet, calling after him, oblivious. "But Mr. Bennet, we must discuss. What did he say? Is he amiable? So rich?" Mr. Bennet merely smiles, a faint, knowing curve of his lips, making his escape. Mrs. Bennet continues her triumphant planning, the daughters their varied speculations, encapsulating the vibrant, peculiar rhythm of the Bennet household. Chapter 4. The Seeds of Love and Misunderstanding. Ah, my dear reader, how quickly a single evening can scatter the seeds of future tales. The Meryton Assembly, that grand collision of local gentry and new arrivals, was barely a memory, yet its impressions had already begun to take root in the quiet chambers of Longbourn. The morning after found Jane Bennet, ever gentle and sanguine, confiding in her dearest Elizabeth. Her heart, guileless and open, had been utterly captivated by Mr. Bingley. "He is precisely what a young man ought to be," Jane declared, eyes bright with joy. "So sensible, so good-humored, and he dances delightfully." Elizabeth, ever the astute observer, smiled fondly. She, too, found Mr. Bingley agreeable, noting his open countenance. But Elizabeth's gaze, sharpened by a more discerning intellect, had not overlooked his companions. His sisters, Jane, Elizabeth mused, are certainly accomplished, but there is a decided air of self-consequence about them, a polish that seems, to my mind, merely a veneer over deeper pride. Miss Bingley, in particular, affects an elegance that barely conceals a provincial disdain. Jane, ever charitable, demurred. "Oh, Lizzie, you are too hard! They were perfectly polite, and they complimented my gown!" Such was Jane's sweet nature, she saw only kindness. It was but a day later that these very sisters, Miss Bingley and Mrs. Hurst, graced Longbourn. They entered with metropolitan grace, an elegance Elizabeth noted felt slightly out of place. Their compliments to Jane were profuse, their admiration seemingly boundless, yet Elizabeth perceived a subtle shift when their eyes met Mrs. Bennet's bustling, or Kitty and Lydia's boisterous laughter. The conversation inevitably turned to Mr. Darcy. "You have no idea, my dear Miss Bennet," began Miss Bingley, "what charming spirits he can possess. His connections, of course, are immense. He is a nephew of Lady Catherine de Bourgh." Mrs. Hurst concurred, detailing his vast Derbyshire estate. Elizabeth listened, a sardonic curl playing on her lips. She heard their praises, but also the underlying boastfulness, the profound pride in their association with such elevated status. They spoke of his faults, his reserve, his arrogance almost admiringly, as if these imperfections merely confirmed his undeniable superiority. "He is so delightfully proud," Miss Bingley cooed. "It makes him quite interesting." Then, with a subtle turn, the conversation veered towards the Bennets, but with a different current. Gentle inquiries about the neighborhood, polite sighs over the lack of proper society, a delicate lament that Longbourn, though charming, was perhaps a little too rustic. Jane, utterly innocent, saw only their smiles, heard only their seemingly kind words, and believed them truly solicitous. But Elizabeth, whose keen intellect was rarely deceived, saw the truth. She saw the quiet condescension, the faint contempt for their lack of fortune and connection, the unspoken judgment that solidified her own poor opinion of Mr. Darcy, and certainly of his companions. As the Bingley sisters departed, Elizabeth reflected on first impressions. Jane saw a budding friendship, the promising bloom of affection. Elizabeth, however, saw the thorny roots of misunderstanding, watered by pride and seeded with prejudice, already intertwining within their new society. Chapter 5. The arrival of Mr. Collins. The Bennet family, though seldom united in sentiment, harbored a collective curiosity regarding their arriving cousin. Mr. Collins, Mrs. Bennet, ever vigilant for a single man, hoped his visit might alleviate the entailment's shadow. Mr. Bennet, however, anticipated a spectacle, having shrewdly guessed Mr. Collins's character from his letter. As twilight deepened, a flurry of expectation rippled through the drawing-room. A tall, heavy-looking young man of 25 entered, an air of formal self-importance softened by incessant bowing. His elaborate courtesy suggested he believed his presence a singular honor. "Permit me, madame," he began, bowing deeply, "to express my profound gratification. Longbourn exceeds description, a desirable residence, which I shall one day, by divine providence, though with a heavy heart, inherit." He paused, his small, grave eyes darting between the assembled faces. Mr. Bennet, from his armchair, offered a dry cough. "We are tolerably well, Mr. Collins, for those condemned to rustic simplicity. Your journey, I trust, was not too arduous." Unperturbed, Mr. Collins straightened. "By no means, sir! My duties, particularly to my esteemed patroness, Lady Catherine de Bourgh of Rosings Park, necessitate such travels. She is a woman of exemplary character, her condescension beyond measure. She has even suggested I marry, deeming it prudent for my station." He beamed, clearly considering this a testament to his elevated status. Mrs. Bennet, a hopeful gleam in her eye, now saw Mr. Collins as a potential solution to the entailment. "Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Charming, she advises marriage. You'll find no shortage of eligible young ladies." She gestured pointedly at her daughters, two of whom stifled giggles. Elizabeth, observing the absurdity with precision, confirmed her father's prediction. Mr. Collins was a concentrated essence of folly. Later, after dinner and countless compliments, Mr. Collins, with immense solemnity, announced his intention to read aloud. "I have here, cousins, a most excellent discourse by the late Dr. Fordyce on the duties of young women. A work of great moral instruction, and one Lady Catherine herself frequently recommends." A collective, barely audible groan rose from the younger girls. Lydia, impatient, declared, "Oh, Mr. Collins, we'd rather you just talked, or a novel." His self-important expression faltered. "My dear cousin, frivolous novels are scarcely conducive to the mind's improvement." Dr. Fordyce, however, before he could elaborate, Mr. Bennet, his patience worn by Lady Catherine's praise and the intellectual ordeal, intervened. "Mr. Collins," he said, "you tax us with your assiduousness. Mary might benefit from Dr. Fordyce. But for the others, a lively conversation, a game of cards, or even a detailed account of Lady Catherine's latest pronouncements would be more agreeable." Mr. Collins, slightly disconcerted, readily expounded upon his noble patroness. The evening thus concluded not with a sermon, but with a torrent of anecdotes concerning Rosings Park, Lady Catherine's wealth, opinions, and benevolent tyranny. His earnestness cemented Mr. Bennet's quiet joy and Elizabeth's profound mirth. Mr. Collins's arrival had, indeed, delivered all the entertainment her father anticipated, introducing a new, formidable, and entirely ridiculous force to Longbourn. Chapter 6. The charming Mr. Wickham the son, though hesitant, painted the Longbourn drawing room with a cheerful glow, much like Mr. Bingley's spirits illuminated Netherfield. He had, to Mrs. Bennet's delight, visited 4 times in as many days. Jane, with sweet composure, confessed to Elizabeth a growing partiality. "He is just what a young man ought to be," Jane mused, a soft blush coloring her cheeks, sensible, good-humored, lively. "I never met with anyone who had so good a design upon my opinion." Elizabeth, observing her sister with fond amusement, smiled. "Indeed, Jane, you are too good. You never see a fault in anybody. Ah, were I but half as good, I should spare myself the delightful pleasure of despising half the world. But come, tell me honestly, do you like Mr. Bingley?" Jane, with a less guarded smile, admitted, "I like him very much, Lizzie. He is quite as amiable as he appears." Their conversation was soon joined by Charlotte Lucas, a young woman of sense. "It is a dangerous habit, Lizzie, to be too particular about one's affections," Charlotte remarked, practical. "If a woman conceals her regard, she may lose the opportunity. In 9 cases out of 10, a woman had better show more affection than she feels. Mr. Bingley, undoubtedly, likes Jane, but it is by no means certain he will marry her, merely because he likes her. If she does not help him on, she may lose him." Elizabeth laughed, shaking her head. "Your theory, Charlotte, is abominable. How can you talk so? To display affection immediately, even if one is not sure of one's own heart." "Indeed I do. The business of a woman's life is to get married, the sooner the better. Happiness in marriage is entirely a matter of chance. It is better to know as little as possible of the defects of the person with whom you are to pass your life. Such knowledge would only make you unhappy." Charlotte's eyes held a shrewd glint. "But to marry without affection, Charlotte, to enter into so solemn an engagement with such cold prudence, that is not for me, nor, I trust, for Jane." Elizabeth's brow furrowed slightly. Their gentle debate was suddenly interrupted by Mrs. Bennet's bustling entrance. Girls, such news from Meriden? Your father has just returned, and he saw, oh, such a handsome young man! A Mr. Wickham, an officer in the militia! So very gentlemanlike, and such a pleasant countenance. He bowed to us, Jane, and to Elizabeth, with such exquisite grace. Your father thinks him quite the handsomest man he has ever seen, Mrs. Bennet exclaimed, fanning herself vigorously. Elizabeth felt a flicker of curiosity. "Mr. Wickham, you say, Mamma? Is he connected to anyone we know?" No, child, merely an officer, but so perfectly charming! He exchanged a few words with Mr. Phillips, and was so attentive! Such manners! I declare he quite put that proud Mr. Darcy out of my head for a moment. This Mr. Wickham has, well, nothing but his good looks, I suppose, but how very good they are." Mrs. Bennet prattled on, her enthusiasm boundless. Charlotte, ever observant, exchanged a significant glance with Elizabeth. "A charming officer, eh? It seems Meryton is providing ample distraction." Elizabeth, though slightly amused by her mother's effusions, found her mind turning to this new name. A vivid image of the haughty Mr. Darcy contrasted sharply with this amiable Mr. Wickham. One all reserve and disdain, the other all grace and pleasing address. This comparison she would make again and again. Even without a direct encounter, whispers of his pleasantness had begun to charm, subtly altering her prejudice, preparing ground fertile for misjudgment. The stage was set not only for Jane's gentle romance, but for Elizabeth's complex journey through the deceptive labyrinth of first impressions. The charming Mr. Wickham, unseen but already lauded, had begun to cast his spell. Chapter 7. The Netherfield ball tensions rise. The carriage wheels crunched on the gravel drive of Netherfield, bringing the Bennet party, their hearts aflutter with varying degrees of anticipation, to the very threshold of society's grand spectacle. Elizabeth, though still smarting from Mr. Collins's recent absurdity and Charlotte's well-meant but misguided counsel, felt a familiar frisson of excitement. The prospect of dancing, of conversation, and yes, of perhaps encountering a certain red-coated militia officer, buoyed her spirits. The great hall, bathed in the glow of 100 candles, hummed with a delightful symphony of laughter, rustling silks, and the lively strains of a country dance. Bingley, ever the amiable host, greeted them with his characteristic warmth, his eyes instantly finding Jane, who bloomed under his open admiration. Miss Bingley and Mrs. Hurst, however, offered civility with a distinct chill, their glances conveying an unspoken disdain for the Bennet family's less refined aspects. Elizabeth's keen eyes scanned the room, a flutter of anticipation turning to a prickle of disappointment, as Mr. Wickham was nowhere to be seen. A strange unease settled upon her, for his absence, she knew, could only be attributed to the pride of another gentleman present. Her gaze inevitably found Mr. Darcy, standing aloof, a dark, imposing figure surveying the scene with an almost disdainful air. The evening quickly became a tapestry woven with threads of delight and vexation. Mr. Collins, heedless of subtlety, attached himself to Elizabeth with an embarrassing tenacity, his clumsy attempts at conversation punctuated by obsequious bows to Lady Catherine de Bourgh, though she was, alas, not present, and pompous pronouncements. His eventual approach to Mr. Darcy, a self-important introduction entirely uninvited, sent a shiver of mortification through Elizabeth. Darcy, ever composed, met the intrusion with a coolness that bordered on contempt, leaving Mr. Collins bewildered but, thankfully, not silenced. Then came the dance, an unexpected, almost audacious invitation from Mr. Darcy himself. Elizabeth, caught between surprise and a powerful urge to decline, found herself swept onto the dance floor, the very act a testament to the strange push and pull of their shared acquaintance. The conversation that ensued was a precise duel of wits, each word a parry, each silence a thrust. "I hope you are satisfied with this dance, Miss Bennet," Darcy began, his tone almost challenging. "Indeed, Mr. Darcy, I confess I am surprised. I had thought you never condescended to dance but with your own family. When my acquaintances are not present, I feel a call to perform my duty." "A duty which I, of course, interrupt," Elizabeth retorted, her eyes sparkling with defiance. The tension between them was palpable, a silent hum of unspoken resentments and undeniable, if begrudging, fascination. They circled each other, not just in the steps of the dance, but in the intricate ballet of their burgeoning antagonism. He questioned her reading habits, she challenged his reserve. The very air around them seemed to crackle. Later, the evening veered into familiar, uncomfortable territory. Mrs. Bennet, flushed with wine and self-importance, spoke too loudly of Jane's prospects with Bingley, heedless of Miss Bingley's sharp, assessing gaze. Mary, with her earnest but entirely misplaced conviction in her musical talents, tortured the company with a performance so excruciatingly off-key that Elizabeth longed for the floor to swallow her whole. Lydia, heedless of decorum, giggled and flirted with every red coat in sight, her impropriety a constant source of mortification. Through it all, Elizabeth felt the weight of her family's social shortcomings keenly, intensified by the cool disdain emanating from Miss Bingley and the aloof disapproval of Mr. Darcy. Yet, even as her prejudice against him solidified, a curious awareness of his unwavering gaze upon her persisted. He watched her, not just with judgment, but with an intensity that baffled and unsettled her. The ball concluded, leaving a lingering taste of triumph for some, of embarrassment for others, and for Elizabeth, a perplexing blend of emotions. The evening had been a crucible, refining her judgments, sharpening her wit, and cementing her resolve against Mr. Darcy, even as his presence, undeniably, had become a more significant, if unwelcome, fixture in her thoughts. The tensions, indeed, had risen, promising a future not of serene tranquility, but of turbulent currents and unforeseen turns. Chapter 8. The Unwanted Proposal. The morning held an uneasy quiet, a silence Elizabeth knew was merely the prelude. Mr. Collins, his letter laid aside with profound self-importance, cleared his throat. "My dear cousin," he began, his voice steeped in solemnity, "I have chosen this auspicious moment to make plain the purpose of my visit to Longbourn. As a clergyman, now possessed of a comfortable living, I feel it my duty to marry. My reasons are threefold: to set a good example, for my own domestic felicity, and to secure your worthy family's comfort by selecting a wife from among yourselves, lessening the entail. It is to you, Miss Elizabeth, that I now offer my hand." Elizabeth, striving for civility though patience-frayed, replied, "You are too hasty, sir. Indeed, you quite misunderstand me. I am very sensible of your good intentions, but I assure you, I am not the woman who can make you happy." Mr. Collins smiled, a faint, condescending twitch of the lips. "My dear Miss Elizabeth, you must allow me to interpret this charming refusal in the customary manner of elegant females. It is, I am persuaded, merely a delicate expression of your natural modesty. I shall therefore disregard your present scruples and proceed as if you had accepted." "Upon my word, Mr. Collins," Elizabeth stated, her voice sharp with genuine exasperation, "your arguments are entirely unavailing. I am not one to be won by persistent blindness. I am serious in my refusal." He leaned closer, confidential. "Consider the advantages, my dear cousin: a comfortable home, a respectable position, and the distinguished society of Lady Catherine de Bourgh. A single woman, especially one without fortune, cannot expect many such offers." Elizabeth rose, signifying the discussion's end. "I must beg you to hear me. I am not interested in your living, nor in Lady Catherine, nor in any of your considerations. I am simply saying no." Just then Mrs. Bennet burst in. "Oh, Mr. Collins, is she behaving herself? She is a most perverse girl." "Madam," Mr. Collins declared, puffing out his chest, "your daughter, while demonstrating charming feminine coyness, will, I am convinced, soon yield to reason." "Yield to reason, sir?" Elizabeth exclaimed, spent. "I have refused Mr. Collins! I have refused him in every form of speech known to me!" Mrs. Bennet wrung her hands, her voice rising to a shriek. "Refused him? Oh, you wicked, ungrateful girl! You will ruin us all! Mr. Bennet, Elizabeth is refusing Mr. Collins!" Mr. Bennet, drawn by the uproar, appeared, spectacles low on his nose, an amused glint in his eye. "What is all this uproar, pray? What is Elizabeth refusing?" "To marry Mr. Collins, papa," cried Lydia, entering. Mrs. Bennet, weeping, wailed, "She will not marry Mr. Collins, and we shall be beggars." Mr. Bennet surveyed the chaotic scene. "Elizabeth," he pronounced, his tone level, "your mother insists you marry Mr. Collins. Your father, however, will not have you marry him." He paused. "From this day on, you must be a stranger to one of your parents. Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins, and I will never see you again if you do. A profound silence fell. Mr. Collins, nonplussed, stood frozen. Elizabeth felt a surge of profound relief, mixed with renewed admiration for her father's wit. The unwanted proposal, at last, dismissed. Chapter 9. The ghosting of Jane Bennet. The folly of Mrs. Bennet's scheme for Jane to ride to Netherfield, rather than travel by carriage, became painfully apparent under the deluge of the morning sky. It was a strategy born of shallow design, intended to secure a lodging that became, instead, a sick-a-bee. For Jane, drenched to the bone and shivering, arrived not as a triumphant guest but as a patient, her gentle constitution succumbing to the chill that evening. The Bingley sisters, though feigning alarm, and offering the prescribed courtesies of broth and a warm room, viewed her sudden illness with a mixture of polite concern and thinly veiled inconvenience. Mr. Bingley alone displayed a genuine distress, a sweet-natured solicitude that spoke of a heart untouched by the calculating froideur of his sisters. A hastily penned note from Miss Bingley arrived at Longbourn, relaying Jane's indisposition with a flourish of concern that seemed to flutter between sincere worry and a subtle congratulation on her brother's admirable humanity. Mrs. Bennet, quite oblivious to the nuanced chill behind the words, saw only confirmation of Mr. Bingley's devotion. "Depend upon it, my dears," she declared with a beaming smile, "Jane will be mistress of Netherfield at last. Her illness is a blessing in disguise, for now he sees her true worth." Elizabeth, however, entertained no such romantic fancies, her heart seized by a more urgent, visceral concern. Jane, her beloved sister, was unwell and alone amidst strangers, for all their superficial hospitality. Without a second thought for propriety or convenience, she resolved to go to her, and despite the protests and offers of the carriage from a vexed Mrs. Bennet, Elizabeth set forth on foot. 5 miles of muddy lanes lay ahead, but her steps were resolute, her spirit unyielding. She arrived at Netherfield Hall, breathless and mud-splashed, her usually neat attire bearing the marks of her determined journey, a sight that elicited gasps of mingled horror and disdain from the fastidious Miss Bingley, and Mrs. Hurst. Mr. Darcy, though outwardly unmoved, observed her heightened color, her sparkling eyes, and the singular determination etched upon her face with an interest that defied his own rigid standards. Once ushered into Jane's room, Elizabeth dismissed all pleasantries, her focus unwavering upon her sister. She found Jane flushed with fever, her sweet countenance clouded by suffering. Elizabeth, with a practicality and tenderness born of true affection, took immediate charge, administering remedies and comforts, her presence a balm to the anxious. Mr. Bingley, and a quiet rebuke to the sisters' more superficial attentions. She passed the day by Jane's bedside, her own fatigue forgotten in the ceaseless care she provided. That evening, summoned to the drawing-room for a brief respite, Elizabeth found herself amidst a scene of glittering artifice. The Bingley sisters, now at their leisure, offered a barrage of thinly veiled criticisms about her appearance, her family, and the vulgarity of her unrefined devotion. "Such a strange walk! And your petticoat, my dear! To arrive so disheveled, quite out of taste!" But Elizabeth, unruffled, met their barbs with good-humored wit and an unwavering sense of her own worth. Her spirit unbowed. Mr. Darcy, a silent observer, found his reluctant admiration for her growing, even as he internally battled the impropriety of her family and circumstances. He saw in her the vitality, the quick intelligence, and the steadfast heart that seemed so conspicuously absent in the polished but hollow company around him. Mr. Bingley, meanwhile, spoke only of Jane, his constant inquiries into her health, a further testament to his benevolent character, shining brightly against the calculated indifference of his sisters. Jane, though physically present and suffering, began to feel less like a beloved guest and more like a convenient backdrop, her genuine needs momentarily overshadowed by the social maneuverings and the vying for Mr. Darcy's attention. In the drawing room, her absence was hardly mourned, her presence in the sick room becoming almost a forgotten inconvenience, a nascent ghosting not of her person, but of her true significance to those who claimed to care. Chapter 10. A visit to Hunsford. The novelty of Hunsford Parsonage, though not without its quiet satisfactions, soon gave way to a rhythm that included a distinct anticipation. Charlotte, ever practical, found contentment in her new domesticity, but Elizabeth, with her keen eye for human foible, sensed the looming presence of Rosings and its formidable mistress. It was not long before the summons arrived, a formal invitation to dine, conveying more command than courtesy. The journey to Rosings was brief, yet charged with a subtle tension. Mr. Collins, breathless with self-importance, detailed every tree and hedge, attributing their very existence to the benevolence of Lady Catherine. Charlotte offered a few placid remarks, but Elizabeth observed the grandeur of the avenue, the imposing structure of the mansion, and braced herself for the encounter. The drawing room of Rosings was a testament to faded magnificence, yet it was not the tapestries or gilded cornices that truly commanded attention, but the figure enthroned by the fire. Lady Catherine de Bourgh, tall and imperious, greeted her visitors with a series of sharp, interrogative glances that felt less like welcome and more like an immediate audit. Her voice, though not loud, carried the weight of absolute authority. "So, Miss Bennet," she began, her gaze fixing upon Elizabeth, "one of Mr. Bennet's younger daughters, I collect. Pray tell, how many are there of you? 5, and no governess, you say? Astonishing, and are you all out yet? No musical accomplishments, perhaps?" Each question was less an inquiry and more a pronouncement, a thinly veiled judgment on the Bennet family's unconventional domestic arrangements. Mr. Collins, as ever, was a fount of obsequious praise, interjecting with affirmations of Lady Catherine's superior taste and unparalleled wisdom. Charlotte, too, answered her ladyship's questions regarding household management with a respectful deference that seemed to satisfy her. But Elizabeth, though polite, refused to be cowed. Her replies were brief, direct, and utterly devoid of the fawning deference Lady Catherine was accustomed to. When questioned about her lack of musical proficiency, she merely stated, "I have neither talent nor practice." Her quiet composure, her refusal to be intimidated, was perhaps more provocative than outright defiance to a woman accustomed to unquestioning submission. Dinner proceeded with a similar interrogation. Lady Catherine dissected every topic, from the condition of the roads to the education of young women, expecting not merely agreement, but silent gratitude for her pronouncements. Miss de Bourgh, a sickly, silent presence, sat by her mother, offering not a single word. When music was requested, Lady Catherine dictated the pieces to be played and offered constant, unsolicited criticisms, even of her own daughter's performance. It was a masterclass in genteel tyranny, a stark reminder of the rigid social distinctions that governed their world. Yet, in Lady Catherine's insistence on every minute detail of their lives, Elizabeth found not just annoyance, but a strange sort of amusement, the absurdity of a woman of such consequence believing her opinions to be universal law, and the sheer nerve required to question every aspect of another's existence, was a peculiar spectacle indeed. As they departed, Elizabeth carried with her not resentment, but a sharpened wit and a quiet determination that the world, even the formidable world of Rosings, would not dictate her spirit. The visit, she reflected, had been precisely as amusing as it was oppressive, a stark illustration of the human comedy, played out under the grand but suffocating roof of Rosings. Chapter 11. The first proposal. Pride on full display. The fire in the drawing room at Netherfield, usually a warm companion, merely flickered with a quiet resentment that evening, mirroring the mood of its human occupants. Miss Bingley, restless and sharp-eyed, paced the luxurious carpet, her sister Louisa occasionally joining her in an aimless turn, their shared ennui directed, as always, towards the gentleman seated at the writing table. Mr. Darcy, absorbed in a letter to his sister, seemed oblivious to their pointed size and the overtures of polite conversation that died upon their lips. He was in his element, composed, detached, yet beneath that polished exterior, a subtle current of thought churned. It was Elizabeth, emerging from Jane's sick room, whose presence inadvertently disturbed the delicate balance of the room. Her return brought with it a refreshing energy, a spark of intelligence that seemed to chase the languor from the very air. She had no intention of drawing attention, but her very essence, her animated eyes and quick wit, was a magnet to a mind like Mr. Darcy's, a challenge to his self-imposed solitude. He laid down his pen, his gaze, though outwardly casual, lingering on her. Miss Bingley, ever vigilant, seized the opportunity. "I hope you are writing of the charming Miss Darcy, Mr. Darcy," she purred, her voice a studied sweetness, so accomplished, so elegant. Darcy offered a curt assent, his eyes, however, having drifted back to Elizabeth. "I am merely relating the progress of my affairs," he stated, a hint of something unreadable in his tone. The conversation, thus initiated, soon revolved around the nature of true accomplishment in women. Miss Bingley, of course, enumerated a litany of skills: needlework, music, languages, drawing, all delivered with a flourish designed to impress Darcy and subtly undermine Elizabeth, who possessed few of these according to the prevailing standards. But Elizabeth, ever the keen observer and spirited debater, found the premise lacking. All these, and a thorough knowledge of music, singing, drawing, dancing, and the modern languages, must be added, Elizabeth conceded with a wry smile, to the usual talent of needlework, netting, and all the innocent vanities of the age. Her eyes twinkled mischievously as she continued, "And yet, I am convinced that there is no woman in England who, when it comes to the point, really possesses them all." Darcy, far from being offended, found himself intrigued. He smiled, a rare and genuine warmth softening his features. "You are too severe upon your own sex," he ventured, though his gaze suggested a burgeoning admiration for her honesty. "When I have a more intimate acquaintance with your accomplishments, I shall be better able to judge." Miss Bingley, witnessing this exchange with mounting vexation, proposed a turn about the room. "Shall we not take a turn?" she suggested to Darcy, expecting him to rise and escort her. It was a clear attempt to monopolize his attention, to draw him away from Elizabeth's captivating wit. But Darcy merely looked up, a faint smile playing on his lips, and replied, "You can be at no loss, Miss Bingley, in a room where there are two young ladies, of equal beauty, to choose from." Then, with a casualness that pierced Miss Bingley's composure, he added, "I have high value for the freedom of my own person." The sisters walked alone, their smiles fixed, their spirits undoubtedly wounded. Darcy, however, remained rooted to his spot, his eyes following Elizabeth. "Indeed," he observed, "I delight in it." He was watching her, not them. The compliment, subtle yet profound, spoke volumes about the shift in his regard. The discussion, rather inevitably, turned to Darcy's own character, a topic Elizabeth approached with a delightful lack of reverence that both startled and captivated him. Bingley, ever the amiable host, tried to smooth over the sharper edges, but Elizabeth, with her piercing insight, continued her playful yet pointed assessment. "Your pride, Mr. Darcy, I believe," she began, "is a very common fault. You take a great deal of trouble, to be sure, to avoid a general acquaintance. You have a turn for the philosophic, but you are too proud to care for any but your own select circle." Her words, though teasing, held a kernel of truth that Darcy could not entirely dismiss. He met her gaze, his own eyes holding a peculiar intensity. "I have not the talent of conversing easily with people I have never seen before." "My dearest sister," Elizabeth retorted, her voice light, "he means to say that he is too proud to care about anybody's opinion but his own." Miss Bingley, seizing her chance to wound, interjected, "I certainly never saw such a happy facility of giving offense," her tone dripping with disdain. Yet, her words seemed to strengthen, rather than diminish, Darcy's fascination. He merely smiled at Elizabeth, a silent acknowledgement of her unique charm, his gaze betraying a depth of feeling that extended far beyond mere amusement. The air crackled with unspoken challenge, admiration, and the undeniable pull of two formidable intellects clashing, a silent proposal of minds already underway, with pride on glorious, undeniable display from every quarter. Chapter 12. The letter that changes everything. The quiet hum of Longbourn felt starkly different in the days following the departure of the Netherfield party. A peculiar melancholy settled over the drawing room, not outright sadness, but a hushed anticipation that lingered like the scent of rain before a storm. Jane, ever composed, sat by the window, her needlework often still in her lap, her gaze drifting towards the path where Mr. Bingley's carriage had last been seen. Elizabeth watched her, a familiar furrow in her brow. Elizabeth, a quiet house indeed. Jane. Too quiet by half, I should say. Jane, turning with a faint, brave smile. Indeed, Lizzie. though I confess I find a certain peace in it. One must always look for the good, must one not? Elizabeth, a wry smile playing on her lips, one must. Though sometimes a vigorous complaint might be a far more satisfying pursuit. I dare say, a little less peace might be a little more honest, my dear sister. Just then, a servant appeared, bearing the morning's post. Jane's eyes brightened slightly as she took a letter, recognizing the elegant, if somewhat affected, hand of Miss Bingley. Elizabeth observed, a flicker of apprehension disturbing her own composure. Jane, her voice light with sudden hope, from Caroline. How delightful! She must be missing us already. Jane broke the seal, unfolded the sheet, and began to read. Elizabeth watched the subtle shifts in her sister's expression, initial pleasure giving way to a faint puzzlement, then a gentle resignation that slowly overshadowed her features. Elizabeth, what news, Jane? Are they to return soon? Jane reading aloud, though omitting some details, her voice softening as she went. My dearest Jane, we are quite settled in town for the winter, you see. So many engagements, so many dear friends to visit. My brother, too, finds London quite agreeable. She paused, rereading a line, a small frown appearing. He is so much admired by all and quite taken with the prospect of seizing his sweet sister, Miss Darcy, more frequently. Such a dear girl, Georgiana! We all feel a connection there that must surely blossom into something more profound. Elizabeth cutting in, sharp as a needle. More profound, indeed. The subtle poison begins. What else does this delightful correspondent convey? Jane continuing, her voice now tinged with a mild regret, as if reluctantly accepting a truth. And as for Netherfield, it is hardly a place to spend a solitary winter, is it? One must have society. And as for any particular attachments, my brother, bless his impressionable heart, is often too easily swayed. One must guard against such hasty decisions, must one not? He needs only a little distraction, a little persuasion, and all will be well. Jane lowered the letter, her eyes glistening, though she quickly blinked away the moisture. She looked at Elizabeth, her expression one of gentle understanding for Miss Bingley's motives. Chapter 13. Till this moment, I never knew myself. The morning brought with it a peculiar tremor through Longbourn. Not of impending storm, but of an eagerly awaited, though much debated, guest. Mrs. Bennet, in a flutter of silk and anticipation, could barely contain her joy, imagining the arrival of a truly respectable gentleman, one who, as heir to their estate, might finally bestow some dignity upon her daughters. Mr. Bennet, however, wore a smile of quiet mischief, having already formed an opinion of his kinsman from a letter that promised much amusement. Precisely at 4 o'clock, a chaise stopped at the door, and there he was, a tall, heavy-looking young man of 25, with a solemnity of carriage that bordered on the absurd. He entered, performing such a multitude of bows as would have fatigued any less practiced performer. He was, to all appearances, the epitome of politeness, yet his every gesture, every pronouncement, bore the indelible stamp of an over-rehearsed production. Allow me, madame, he began, addressing Mrs. Bennet with a reverence that seemed almost devotional, to introduce myself as your cousin, William Collins, unworthy as I feel to stand in such a presence, yet emboldened by the gracious invitation extended to me. Mrs. Bennet, flattered beyond measure, returned his civilities with an eager warmth. Kitty and Lydia exchanged bewildered glances, already fidgeting under the weight of his formality. Mary merely adjusted her spectacles, intrigued by this new specimen of humanity. Jane offered her gentle, unaffected welcome, whilst Elizabeth, her eyes sparkling with an almost imperceptible mirth, waited, observing, her discerning mind already at work. Mr. Collins then embarked upon a meticulously prepared speech, detailing the circumstances of his visit. He spoke of his good fortune in securing the patronage of Lady Catherine de Bourgh, a lady whose condescension, he assured them, was a mark of the highest distinction. His description of Rosings, her magnificent estate, was so elaborate, so effusive, that one might have imagined it the eighth wonder of the world. He dwelled upon Lady Catherine's wisdom, her generosity, her unwavering sense of propriety, painting a portrait of a woman whose every whim was law, and whose slightest utterance was an oracle. Indeed, he declared, pausing to collect his thoughts, her ladyship is pleased to bestow upon me a living in her gift, a parsonage of ample dimensions, with a charming garden and a convenient paddock. It is there, by her ladyship's express desire and my own humble inclination, that I intend to take a wife. A momentary silence fell, punctuated only by the rustle of Mrs. Bennet's dress. She cast a triumphant glance at her daughters. Here, she thought, was a man of sense and stability, a man who, if his initial impressions held true, could be persuaded to look favorably upon one of her own. Mr. Collins then explained his decision to visit Longbourn, attributing it to a desire to atone for the past and to make what amends are in my power for the injury a peculiar entailment has inflicted upon your family. He spoke of burying all animosities, of extending the branch of peace, and of offering friendship to those who would soon, by the cruel hand of fate, be dispossessed. His words, though meant to convey benevolence, only served to heighten the family's awkwardness, particularly when addressed to Mr. Bennet, who merely bowed his head, a muscle twitching at the corner of his lips. The evening that followed proved equally illustrative of Mr. Collins's character. At supper, he delivered a long, ponderous compliment on the excellence of the joint and the commendable skill of Mrs. Bennet's cook. Later, in the drawing room, upon being asked to read aloud, he bypassed novels and lighter fare, producing instead a volume of Fordyce's Sermons, a collection of moral discourses primarily intended for young women. His droning voice, coupled with the book's earnest admonitions, quickly sent Lydia and Kitty into fits of suppressed giggles, only quieted by their father's stern gaze. Elizabeth, however, found herself increasingly charmed, not by his eloquence, but by the sheer, unadulterated absurdity of the man. Each affected bow, each pompous declaration, each obsequious reference to Lady Catherine, solidified her understanding. Till this moment, she had known only his letter, a curiosity, a source of mild amusement. Now, confronted with the living man, she felt an exquisite sense of discovery. Till this moment, she had never truly known herself capable of such profound, yet silent, delight in the follies of others. Jane, poor Mr. Bingley, he will be quite forlorn without us, I am sure. And Caroline is only trying to make him happy, to ensure he has the best society. She means well, Lizzie, truly. She believes he is too easily imposed upon, and merely wishes to protect him. And Miss Darcy, a sweet girl indeed. They would make a very suitable match. Elizabeth rising, her fists clenching, her voice low and furious with suppressed anger. Jane, do you not see it? The venom, the deliberate cruelty, too easily swayed, a little persuasion, it is a thinly veiled declaration of war upon your peace. She means to keep him in London, to throw him at Miss Darcy, to prevent any further acquaintance between you. It is a vile, calculated scheme, and I vow I've never despised Miss Bingley more. She cares nothing for Mr. Bingley's happiness, only his fortune and her own convenience. And as for the hasty decisions and solitary winter, it is an insult to your intelligence, and a testament to her own malicious meddling. Jane, distressed, but still clinging to her charitable view, her voice barely a whisper, "Oh, Lizzie, you are too hard on her. She is our friend, and I cannot believe she would intentionally cause such pain. She merely states facts. Perhaps they are better suited for London. And perhaps I was mistaken about his affections." Elizabeth, mistaken? No, Jane, he loved you. And she, with her snobbish sister and that infernal Mr. Darcy, conspire to tear him from you. This letter is not a friendly missive, it is a declaration of victory, a triumph of cold, calculating worldliness over genuine affection. My dearest sister, do not let your good nature blind you to the baseness of others. This changes everything. Elizabeth paced, agitation radiating from her. Jane watched her, her initial resignation slowly giving way to a dawning, painful understanding. The weight of the words sunk in, not just Caroline's, but Elizabeth's furious interpretation of them. Jane, a barely audible whisper changes everything. Elizabeth turning to her, her face etched with a mixture of anger and fierce protectiveness. It means, my dearest Jane, that we have been cruelly deceived, and that happiness, once within our grasp, has been snatched away by the envious and the proud. Jane looked at the crumpled letter in her hand, then out the window at the bleak autumn landscape. The cheerfulness she had tried to maintain had utterly vanished, replaced by a profound sorrow that chilled her to the bone. The letter, seemingly innocuous to her at first, had indeed changed everything. Chapter 14. A tour of Pemberley. The morning dawned fair and bright, painting the Derbyshire landscape in hues of deepest green as the chaise carried Elizabeth Bennet and her aunt and uncle, the gardeners, towards Pemberley. There was a particular flutter in Elizabeth's breast, a blend of curiosity and apprehension she tried, perhaps unsuccessfully, to quell. She had convinced herself that seeing Mr. Darcy's home would confirm her impressions, steel her resolve against his memory. Yet, as they approached the noble mansion, emerging from a gentle swell of ground amidst ancient trees, a different sensation began to stir. Pemberley was, without question, magnificent. But it was not grandiloquence or pomp that struck her, it was a profound sense of natural beauty, of tasteful harmony. The house, substantial yet perfectly proportioned, stood in easy repose, as if a natural outgrowth of the landscape itself. No artificial straight lines, no forced formality like Rosings. Here art and nature seemed to conspire in perfect accord. And of this place she mused, a sudden, sharp pang of regret piercing her. I might have been mistress! With these beautiful walks and dignified rooms, I might have been living in this very spot. The thought, born of wistful fancy, quickly yielded to a more painful one. My conduct, my prejudiced folly, has irrevocably severed that connection. They were received by Mrs. Reynolds, the elderly housekeeper, a woman with a kind, open countenance and an air of quiet dignity. Her voice, gentle and respectful, guided them through the impressive rooms. The apartments were spacious, adorned with elegant furniture and tastefully chosen art, yet everything spoke of comfort and lived in warmth, not cold display. Elizabeth observed every detail with an almost desperate attention, trying to reconcile the character of the place with the character she had so firmly ascribed to its master. She saw no trace of the overbearing pride she associated with Mr. Darcy. Instead, there was a pervading sense of good breeding, generous comfort, and an understated respect for tradition. It was in the picture gallery, among the portraits of Darcy's ancestors, that Mrs. Reynolds truly began to dismantle Elizabeth's carefully constructed prejudices. Pointing to a striking likeness of Mr. Darcy himself, she spoke with an affection that surprised Elizabeth. There is not a kinder, or a more generous man in the world, ma'am, than Mr. Darcy. Mrs. Reynolds continued, her eyes softening as she regarded the painted face. I have never had a cross word from him in my life, and I have known him ever since he was a child. He is the best landlord, and the best master, she added, turning to Mrs. Gardiner, that ever lived. Not like some young men who are extravagant and wild, but a steady, sensible, and amiable man. And so much for his poor sister, too. He has been like a father to her. Each word was a hammer blow to Elizabeth's convictions. Asterisk amiable, steady. The best master asterisk. This was not the arrogant, selfish, disdainful man who had so grievously wounded Jane and slighted her family. This was a portrait of a benevolent, responsible gentleman, painted by someone who had known him intimately for years, someone with no conceivable motive to deceive. Elizabeth's cheeks burned, not with anger, but with shame. She recalled her own words, her own fierce denunciations, and contrasted them with the genuine warmth and respect in Mrs. Reynolds's tone. Had she been so utterly, miserably wrong? Was her own judgment so clouded by pique and misapprehension? The notion that she had mistaken him, truly mistaken him, caused her a humiliation she had never before experienced. Chapter 15. The second first impression. The air in Longbourn, already thick with the scent of simmering rectory ambition and feminine exasperation, fairly crackled with an unprecedented tempest. Mr. Collins, having delivered his astonishing matrimonial monologue with all the solemnity of a parish clerk reading banns, found his self-congratulatory glow abruptly dimmed by Elizabeth's resolute refusal. He, however, was not easily dissuaded from his conviction that no invariably meant yes when delivered by a young lady of proper breeding. Her second, more emphatic denial, coupled with his aunt's oft-repeated adage that ladies were always pleased to accept a man who persevered, merely fortified his belief that Elizabeth was exhibiting that delightful modesty so becoming to her sex. It fell to Mrs. Bennet, upon learning the full scope of her daughter's obduracy, to elevate the domestic drama to operatic heights. Her lamentations echoed through the modest parlor, a mournful dirge of ruined prospects and filial ingratitude. An ungrateful, headstrong girl, she wailed, to refuse such an establishment. We shall all be ruined, Elizabeth. No one will ever marry you now. But it was Mr. Bennet, emerging from his customary retreat into amused detachment, who delivered the decisive, and most delightfully unexpected, pronouncement. Summoning Elizabeth, he fixed her with a gaze that, though softened by paternal affection, held the unmistakable glint of a man prepared to stand by his principles. Your mother insists upon your marrying Mr. Collins, he declared, his voice carefully devoid of its usual playful mockery, and I, on your refusing him, from this day you must be a stranger to one of your parents. Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins, and I will never see you again if you do. This elegant ultimatum, delivered with such perfect, laconic wit, had the desired effect of momentarily silencing the clamor, though Mr. Collins, oblivious to the profound family upheaval he had instigated, continued his interminable perambulations, occasionally glancing at Elizabeth with an expression of patient, if slightly bemused, expectation. His presence remained a suffocating blanket upon the household, a constant reminder of the chaos he had wrought. Fortuitously, a timely diversion presented itself. The arrival of Lydia and Kitty, bubbling with the latest gossip from Meryton, brought news of a new officer, a Mr. Wickham, whose handsome countenance and engaging manners were already the talk of the town. His charms, it seemed, were of a rather more accessible nature than those of the haughty Mr. Darcy. It was but a short while later, during an afternoon promenade through Meryton's bustling streets, that Elizabeth, accompanied by her sisters and Mr. Collins, first encountered this much vaunted gentleman. Mr. Wickham, clad in the smart uniform of the militia, possessed an air of easy grace and open frankness that instantly captivated. His smile, quick and engaging, seemed to promise a ready companionship, a pleasant lightness of being that was a welcome antidote to the oppressive solemnity of Mr. Collins. Elizabeth, finding herself quite charmed by his conversation, felt a rare lightness of spirit. Here, at last, was a man whose pleasant countenance spoke of an equally pleasant disposition, a man seemingly devoid of the complexities and supercilious pride that so often marred the more elevated members of society. But just as Elizabeth's spirits were thus buoyed, a sudden, almost imperceptible shift occurred. Down the street, approaching with their customary disdainful air, were Mr. Darcy and Mr. Bingley. A collective hush seemed to fall over the small group as, by a strange and inescapable coincidence, all four gentlemen found themselves within an awkward proximity. Mr. Bingley, ever the amiable host, offered a warm greeting to the Bennet sisters, his natural good humor shining through. But it was the fleeting, yet utterly potent, exchange between Mr. Darcy and Mr. Wickham that riveted Elizabeth's attention. A profound, almost visceral, shock seemed to pass through both men. Mr. Wickham, who had just moments before been the epitome of geniality, stiffened, his open smile faltering, replaced by a momentary look of constrained resentment. Mr. Darcy, usually so unyielding in his composure, flushed distinctly, and then turned pale, his eyes fixed upon Wickham with an intensity that spoke volumes of a history hidden and unresolved. The two men exchanged the barest of formal bows, a gesture devoid of warmth, bristling with an unspoken animosity that was as chilling as it was instantaneous. This brief, charged encounter, barely lasting a moment, nevertheless imprinted itself deeply upon Elizabeth's consciousness. It was a second first impression, a swift, disquieting revision of her nascent admiration for Mr. Wickham, and a profound deepening of her already established antipathy towards Mr. Darcy. For what dark secret, what bitter wrong, could occasion such palpable aversion between two men? Her mind, ever keen to discern character, was suddenly awash with questions, her initial, pleasant perception of Wickham now overlaid with a perplexing shadow, and her long-held judgment of Darcy cemented by what appeared to be incontrovertible evidence of his disagreeable nature. The Assembly Ball, now only days away, promised revelations, and Elizabeth, her curiosity thoroughly piqued, found herself eagerly anticipating them. Chapter 16. The scandal of Lydia Bennet the son, a false friend, shines too brightly upon Longbourn this morning. Stripping the drawing room of any comforting shadow, Mrs. Bennet paces with the erratic energy of a trapped bird, her hands twisting nervously. Mr. Bennet, usually a fortress of calm cynicism, sits rigid, his gaze lost somewhere beyond the window, beyond the very fields of Hertfordshire. Jane and Elizabeth stand close, their fingers intertwined, a silent pact of dread forming between them. A hesitant knock. A maid enters, bearing a single, ominous letter. It is addressed to Mr. Bennet, but his hand trembles, refusing to take it. He gestures towards Jane. Jane voiced barely a whisper from Brighton, from Colonel Forster. A chill descends, colder than any winter draft. Jane's slender fingers tear open the seal. Her eyes, usually so serene, dart across the page. With each line, the color drains from her cheeks, leaving her face ashen. A small, horrified gasp escapes her lips, barely audible above Mrs. Bennet's restless shuffling. Mrs. Bennet impatiently, a rising whine in her voice. Well, Jane, what news? Is Lydia well? Has Wickham finally proposed? Has she chosen her ribbons for the wedding? Jane slowly lifts her head, her eyes wide, glistening with unshed tears, meeting Elizabeth's. The silent question, the shared horror, passes between them. Jane stammering, almost inaudible, "Oh, Papa, Mama." She hands the letter to Mr. Bennet, who now, with a terrible certainty, snatches it. His eyes devour the text. The lines around his mouth deepen, his jaw clenches. He reads aloud, his voice raspy, incredulous, each word a hammer blow. Mr. Bennet. Lydia Bennet eloped with Mr. Wickham without any intention of marriage. It would seem his voice drops to a ghastly murmur. Last seen heading towards London. No trace. The words hang in the air. A vile, choking miasma. Mrs. Bennet's frantic pacing ceases. She stares, her face blank with uncomprehending terror. Then a slow, dawning horror spreads across her features. Mrs. Bennet, a piercing shriek rising in pitch. Eloped. No marriage, my Lydia. Ruin! Utterly, utterly ruin! My poor, dear child! And us! We are all ruined. She collapses onto the sofa, a crumpled heap of silk and hysterics, her sobs echoing through the stunned silence. Elizabeth to herself, a gasp of pure anguish. No marriage. Oh, Lydia! How could she? So reckless, so lost to all sense of propriety. Her mind reels, a maelstrom of regret. Wickham's charming smiles, his plausible lies, her own foolish blindness. Her father's indulgence, her own half-hearted warnings, dismissed. A scorching wave of guilt washes over her. Mr. Bennet a grim, hollow tone, devoid of all wit. Wickham a scoundrel, a villain. I should have seen it. I should have held her in check. This is my folly, my neglect. He crushes the letter in his hand, his knuckles white. The enormity of his daughter's reckless act, and his own complicity, presses down upon him. He looks at his two eldest, their faces etched with despair. Jane tearfully, her voice trembling. What are we to do, Papa? Our name, our family. Elizabeth stepping forward, a flicker of desperate resolve in her eyes. We must find them. Immediately. Papa, you must go to London. We cannot let this stand. There must be some hope, some way to mend this, though I fear the unspoken fear hangs heavy, the irreparable damage, the indelible stain, the utter destruction of any prospect for Kitty, Mary, and even for themselves. The lightness of their world has shattered, replaced by a sudden, suffocating darkness. Mr. Bennet rising, his face now a mask of grim determination. London. Yes, I shall go at once. What a fool I have been. What a fool. He moves towards the door, a man suddenly aged, stooped beneath the crushing weight of his daughter's disgrace. Elizabeth watches him go, her heart sinking, the full, bitter taste of scandal settling upon her very soul. Chapter 17. Darcy's secret intervention. The quiet of Longbourn, usually a comforting balm, now felt heavy with Jane's unspoken sorrow. Her gentle spirit, ever inclined to see the best, struggled valiantly against the stark reality of Bingley's abrupt departure. A pall had fallen, and while Jane moved through her days with a quiet grace, her soft eyes held a pain Elizabeth knew too well. Elizabeth, however, felt no such mildness. Her mind, a keen instrument of observation, worked furiously. Miss Bingley's sudden urgency, Darcy's peculiar air of self-satisfaction before their hurried exit, it all coalesced into a most disagreeable picture. She felt it, with a certainty bordering on conviction. This was no mere caprice of affection, no natural ebb of interest, but a deliberate contrivance, a meddlesome interference in a budding attachment. Her heart bristled with a growing indignation. Then a letter arrived. A feminine hand, elegantly scripted, Miss Caroline Bingley's. Jane's hopes, like fragile blossoms in a winter chill, momentarily revived. She retreated to the solace of her room, Elizabeth following, a silent sentinel to her sister's fragile anticipation. But as Jane read, the color drained from her cheeks, her soft eyes growing wide with a pain Elizabeth knew too well. The paragraphs, read aloud in a voice that trembled only slightly, carried a cruel, almost saccharine sweetness. Miss Bingley wrote of their prolonged stay in London, of Mr. Bingley's deep attachment to his sisters, and, with a casual cruelty, of his increasing admiration for Miss Darcy. She is a charming girl indeed, Jane murmured, her voice barely a whisper, as she recounted the lines, and Mr. Bingley's good taste will surely lead him to appreciate such perfections. Her hands, clutching the letter, trembled visibly. Elizabeth snatched the missive, scanning the lines with indignant fury. Perfections, Jane! This is a deliberate slight, a calculated barb, aimed directly at your unsuspecting heart. To suggest Bingley's affections could so swiftly transfer, to so openly champion another woman, to paint Miss Darcy's accomplishments in such dazzling colors, while you languish here, it is a gross impertinence. And Mr. Darcy, she hissed, her voice barely contained, is doubtless at the very heart of this odious plot. His proud, meddling nature could never brook an alliance he deemed beneath his precious friend, and he has clearly used his influence to effect this separation. Jane, ever forgiving, ever unwilling to see ill, tried to interject. No, Lizzie, you are too harsh. Caroline always spoke highly of me. Perhaps Mr. Bingley truly does prefer Miss Darcy. She is accomplished and wealthy, an undeniable match in the eyes of the world. Folly, Jane, utter folly, Elizabeth retorted, her eyes blazing. Do you truly believe Miss Bingley capable of genuine affection, when her letters breathe only artifice? She seeks to separate you, and she uses the very hand of her brother's esteemed friend to do it. This notion of Bingley's growing attachment to Miss Darcy is a mere fabrication, designed to crush your spirits and ensure his permanent absence from Longbourn. Do not allow your goodness to blind you to their cunning. It is a vile stratagem, orchestrated, I am certain, by that odious man, Mr. Darcy, who saw in you nothing but an inconvenience to his grand schemes, a threat to his friend's consequence. Jane's head fell to Elizabeth's shoulder, silent tears a testament to her shattered hopes. Elizabeth held her close, her heart swelling with sisterly love and a renewed, fierce contempt for the arrogance that would inflict such pain. "They shall not break you, my dear Jane," she vowed silently, her gaze hardening, "nor shall their treachery escape my censure." The secret intervention, so cunningly devised, had only succeeded in igniting Elizabeth's formidable prejudice, a flame that would not soon be extinguished. Chapter 18. The return of Mr. Bingley, the quietude of Hertfordshire, so often the subject of genteel complaints amongst the more fashionable, had been quite delightfully shattered. Not by the advent of a grand ball, nor a scandal, but by something far more intoxicating to certain minds' red coats. The militia had arrived, and with them, a ripple of excitement that coursed from Longbourn to Meryton, where their barracks were established. For Kitty and Lydia Bennet, it was a revelation, a daily summons to their Aunt Phillips's in Meryton, where the sight of dashing officers was almost as readily available as gossip and tea. "Oh, Lizzie," Lydia would declare, eyes sparkling, "you must come! There are so many fine men, and not a dull one amongst them!" Elizabeth, though less susceptible to the charms of mere uniforms, found herself drawn into the Meryton excursions, often in the company of Jane, whose gentle beauty softened even the sharpest tongues. It was on one such occasion, whilst perambulating down the High Street, that destiny, or perhaps just happenstance, truly intervened. A young officer, strikingly handsome with a captivating air, engaged them in conversation, Mr. George Wickham. His manners were perfect, his smile engaging, and Elizabeth found her attention riveted. Just then, two riders and a gig passed by Mr. Bingley, smiling warmly, Mr. Hurst looking somewhat bored, and Mr. Darcy, whose dark gaze swept over the group, pausing fractionally on Wickham. It was but a moment, a flicker, yet the effect was unmistakable, a stark, sudden tension, a profound coldness that passed between Darcy and Wickham, leaving Elizabeth puzzled, intrigued, and utterly convinced that something was amiss. Later that evening at Mrs. Phillips's, amidst the clatter of cards and the murmur of polite society, Elizabeth found herself again conversing with Mr. Wickham. He possessed a delightful candor, and with a seemingly artless ease, he began to speak of Mr. Darcy. His story unfolded like a tragic play, how Darcy's father, his godfather, had promised him a comfortable living, a church rectory, but upon the elder Darcy's death, the younger Mr. Darcy had, through a cruel disregard for his father's wishes and his own inherent spite, denied Wickham his rightful inheritance. Elizabeth listened, her heart swelling with indignation on Wickham's behalf. This explained the coolness. This was the key to Mr. Darcy's pride, his disagreeable demeanor, his very character. He was a man capable of such injustice, such unfeeling cruelty. Wickham, on the other hand, was the wronged hero unjustly maligned. Her judgment, so swiftly formed against Darcy at their first meeting, was now cemented, validated by this compelling narrative. What a villain Darcy must be! How noble and deserving of sympathy was Mr. Wickham! The world, it seemed, was full of such stark contrasts, and Elizabeth felt a gratifying sense of insight. The Netherfield ball, announced for the following Tuesday, became the sole topic of conversation for days. For Elizabeth, the prospect was not merely about the general gaiety, but the singular hope of dancing with Mr. Wickham. She longed to converse further with him, to hear more of his agreeable discourse, and perhaps, to solidify her convictions about Mr. Darcy. Even Bingley's sisters, who called at Longbourn with the formal invitation, with their elegant bonnets and disdainful glances at the Meryton gossip, could not dampen her spirits. She merely observed their condescension with a wry amusement, secure in her newfound understanding of character. Mr. Bingley himself, ever the affable host, spoke of the ball with genuine delight, unaware of the currents of judgment and deceit swirling beneath the surface of his festive plans. The stage was set, not merely for dancing, but for further revelations, deeper misunderstandings, and the intricate dance of Pride and Prejudice. Chapter 19. The dragon at the gate *The morning sun, usually a cheerful harbinger, seemed to cast a peculiar, almost theatrical glow upon the drawing room at Longbourn. Mr. Collins, having cornered Elizabeth, cleared his throat with an air of immense import, a sound akin to a minor earthquake rumbling through a dusty library. He had arranged himself in a posture of carefully cultivated formality, his hands clasped before him as if preparing to deliver a particularly lengthy sermon to a captive congregation of one. Dear reader, for weeks the air had buzzed with the quiet hum of expectation, a sort of marital electricity that Mr. Collins, in his infinite self-regard, mistook for universal longing for his person. Having, to his utter bewilderment, been refused by the eldest Miss Bennet, he now, with the unflappable logic of the truly self-absorbed, turned his attentions to the second. Elizabeth, ever keen, had noted the signs, the sidelong glances, the increasingly particular compliments, each a brick in the wall of his matrimonial intent. She had braced herself, perhaps with a mischievous glint in her eye, for the inevitable. But even she could not have predicted the sheer, unadulterated grandeur of the performance. Mr. Collins Colisk, my dear Miss Elizabeth, I am well aware that it is usual with young ladies to reject at first the addresses of a man whom they secretly mean to accept, when he proposes to them. I shall therefore by no means consider your refusal as final, but rather as a natural and commendable diffusion of feminine delicacy. Elizabeth, whose delicate sensibilities were rather being assaulted than diffused, struggled to suppress a smile. He had not even proposed yet, and already he was dismissing her refusal. He spoke as if delivering an edict, a papal bull on the subject of courtship, entirely devoid of personal sentiment. His eyes, fixed upon a point just above her head, seemed to consult some invisible guide on the proper cadence for such an momentous occasion. Mr. Collins Kolansk, to be brief, and to the point, which is always the best method, I have chosen you for my wife. And these are my reasons. Firstly, it is the duty of a clergyman to set the example of matrimony in his parish. Secondly, Lady Catherine de Bourgh, a lady whose discernment and benevolence are beyond question, has most condescendingly advised me to marry. And thirdly, and this I trust will weigh most heavily upon your tender heart, it is my sincere desire to make some amends for the entail of the Longbourn estate. He paused, a triumphant flourish in his manner, as if these three impeccable reasons were a legal document, stamped and sealed, leaving no room for argument. Elizabeth, however, felt a different kind of sealing, a sealing of her lips against an eruption of laughter, and then, a firm setting of her jaw. Elizabeth Kolinsk, Mr. Collins, I am very sensible of your attention, and I am much obliged to you for it. But I must beg you to understand that I cannot accept you. Mr. Collins Kolensk waving a dismissive hand my dear Miss Elizabeth. You are, as I said, merely exercising that charming diffidence which adds so much grace to your sex. I understand these little coquetries, but allow me to assure you, my proposals are as advantageous as they are sincere. I am not to be trifled with. Elizabeth Kolensk her voice sharper now, a spark of indignation igniting in her eyes. Indeed, Mr. Collins, I am not trifling. I am perfectly serious. You could not make me happy, and I am convinced that I am the last woman in the world who could make you so. And were I to accept you, I should be acting with a deceptive and unpardonable fault. Mr. Collins Kolaskaska, faint flicker of annoyance crossed his face, quickly subsumed by his unshakable conviction. Nonsense, Miss Elizabeth. You are, without doubt, merely being humble. A clergyman's wife must be modest. Besides, your fortune, though respectable, is not such as to give you any reasonable expectation of a more advantageous offer. And I speak candidly, as becomes a man of my cloth, when I say that you will never again meet with a man so eager to overlook your relative lack of connections. Elizabeth stared, utterly dumbfounded. His condescension was breathtaking. She stood up, her patience finally worn thin. Elizabeth Kolisk, Mr. Collins, I am honored by your proposal, but I am determined to refuse you. I beg you will accept my answer as final. At this precise, unfortunate moment, Mrs. Bennet, drawn by the unusual silence, or perhaps a mother's sixth sense for potential matrimony, bustled into the room, her face alight with expectation. Mrs. Bennet Kolensk, what is all this, Elizabeth? Why are you so obstinate? Collins, I hope you have not been so foolish as to be really offended by her refusal. She is a very headstrong, foolish girl, but she will be brought to reason. Mr. Collins, Kolensk relief washing over him, affirming his initial belief. Indeed, madam, I am well aware of the proprieties of female reluctance. I feel sure that with your assistance we shall soon reach a happy understanding. Ask Mrs. Bennet Kolansk, that is right. Now, Elizabeth, you must understand, it is a great advantage to you. He is a most respectable man, and a living will protect us all when your poor father is gone. Come, let us go to your father. He will make you see sense. Asterisk and so, poor Mr. Collins, convinced he was merely encountering a spirited, but ultimately malleable female, was led triumphantly by Mrs. Bennet to Mr. Bennet's library, where that gentleman sat ensconced in his books, his favorite refuge from domestic clamor. Asterisk Mrs. Bennet, colask, my dear Mr. Bennet, you must speak to Elizabeth. She will not marry Mr. Collins, and we shall all be ruined. Tell her she must accept him, or I shall never speak to her again. Mr. Bennet slowly lowered his book, his spectacles resting precariously on his nose, a twinkle of amusement in his eyes as he surveyed the agitated trio. Mr. Bennet Kolensk Elizabeth. Your mother insists upon your marrying Mr. Collins. Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins, and I will never see you again if you do. A stunned silence fell. Mr. Collins's jaw dropped. Mrs. Bennet let out a gasp of outrage, truly flummoxed. Elizabeth, however, felt a surge of profound relief, a warmth spreading through her chest at her father's dry, unwavering support. The dragon, for all its bluster, had been met at the gate, not with fear, but with wit and an unyielding spirit. And thus, the great matrimonial offensive of Mr. Collins met its decisive, if utterly unexpected, end. He was a man utterly unprepared for an answer that was both serious and contrary to his deeply held convictions about his own desirability and the pliability of women. He had offered a bargain, Elizabeth had demanded a soul, and in that moment, a small but significant victory for independence was won in the drawing room of Longbourn. The dragon, though wounded in pride, would retreat, but the echoes of its roar would long reverberate through the Bennet household. Mr. Collins, red-faced and sputtering, could only retreat, his grand design having crashed upon the unyielding rocks of Elizabeth Bennet's spirit and Mr. Bennet's wry, but absolute, declaration. Chapter 20. The second proposal. Love earned the morning air, crisp and hinting at the approach of summer, seemed to hum with a quiet expectation. Elizabeth Bennet walked slowly along the path bordering the shrubbery at Longbourn, her thoughts a tangled skein of disbelief and burgeoning hope. Lady Catherine's departure had left a peculiar void, yet it had also stripped away the last vestiges of her own stubborn pride, laying bare the truth of Mr. Darcy's character, and more importantly, the sudden, overwhelming realization of her own regard for him. She recalled his letter, his benevolence towards Lydia, and how deeply she had wronged him with her unshakable prejudice. A blush rose to her cheeks at the memory of her cutting words. Then, from the bend in the path, emerged the very subject of her intense contemplation. Mr. Darcy. Her heart gave a violent start, betraying her outward calm. He advanced, his step no longer possessing its usual confident stride but seeming somewhat hesitant, almost diffident. Their eyes met, and a wave of unspoken sentiment passed between them, a shared recognition of past errors and a tentative glimpse into an uncertain future. Miss Bennet, he began, his voice a little strained, I trust I do not intrude upon your reflections. Not at all, Mr. Darcy, Elizabeth replied, striving for an ease she did not feel. I was merely enjoying the solitude. Her gaze flickered to him, taking in the seriousness of his expression. He looked less formidable now, more approachable, almost vulnerable. They fell into an awkward silence, walking side by side, the air thick with unspoken words. Each moment stretched, pregnant with possibility. Elizabeth could feel the tension, a vibrant current between them, and a strange sense of anticipation grew within her. She sensed he had something of consequence to impart, something that held the balance of her entire future. He stopped suddenly, turning to face her, his hands clasped behind his back. The intensity of his gaze held her captive. I have been in Meryton, he stated, his voice low, and heard tidings of a recent visitor to Longbourn. I understand my aunt, Lady Catherine, paid you a call. Elizabeth's lips curved into a faint smile. Indeed, Mr. Darcy. She did us the honor of a most spirited visit. He allowed a small, almost imperceptible smile to touch his own lips before it vanished, replaced by an earnestness that pierced her very soul. Her interference, though ill-judged, has perhaps served a purpose I dared not hope for. It has, at the very least, confirmed to me that my hopes are not entirely extinguished. He paused, taking a deep, fortifying breath. My feelings, he continued, his voice gaining strength, are still what they were last spring. If your sentiments, however, have undergone any change, I would beg you to tell me so at once. My affections and wishes are unchanged, but one word from you will silence me on this subject forever. Elizabeth stood motionless, scarcely daring to breathe. The world seemed to shrink to the small space between them, her heart thrumming against her ribs. She looked into his eyes, seeing not the proud, condescending man who had once slighted her family and insulted her understanding, but a man humbled by love, earnest in his repentance, and worthy of every respect. Her own prejudice, so long a blinding force, had finally dissolved. "You are too generous, Mr. Darcy," she whispered, her voice thick with emotion. "I cannot claim that my sentiments were always just. I was blind, prejudiced, absurdly partial against you." A tear welled in her eye, not of sorrow, but of profound relief and tenderness. "But they have changed. They have changed beyond anything I could have imagined. I believe I have long loved you, though I was too proud to admit it, even to myself." A tremor passed through him. His face, which had been so rigidly controlled, softened with an expression of overwhelming joy and relief. "Elizabeth," he breathed, stepping closer, "can it truly be? After all I have said, all I have done, after all I have said and done," she corrected gently, meeting his gaze fully. "We have both been rather foolish, have we not? But I truly hope that we have both learned our lessons." He reached out, his hand gently touching hers. A warmth, electric and profound, spread through her. "More than I can express," he murmured, his thumb tracing a light circle on her skin. "To know that I have earned your affection, after so nearly forfeiting it entirely, is a happiness I never believed I deserved." The morning sun, now higher in the sky, seemed to shine with a renewed brilliance, casting long, peaceful shadows. The air no longer hummed with anticipation, but with a quiet, certain joy, the sweet prelude to a love both hard-won and deeply cherished. Chapter 21. Happily Ever After. Ah, what a whirlwind of emotion Longbourn had become! The echoes of Mr. Collins's ill-fated proposal still hung in the air, a peculiar scent of disappointment and relief mingling in Mrs. Bennet's dressing room. Mr. Collins himself, that most resilient of men, wasted no time in retreating, his peculiar brand of dignity or lack thereof intact. He had taken his leave, having delivered a farewell speech of such profound absurdity that even the long-suffering Mr. Bennet found a fresh source of amusement. He was bound, he declared, for Hunsford and the comforts of his patroness, Lady Catherine de Bourgh. Little did anyone suspect the true direction of his compass. But before the ink could dry on that peculiar chapter, another missive arrived, this one from the irrepressible Lydia. A letter, penned in her characteristic flurry, detailing the departure of the Meridan officers. How the town, she lamented, would be left desolate. Not a redcoat in sight, save for the memory. And Wickham, dear Wickham, had gone too, much to Elizabeth's silent, inexplicable relief, yet also a pang of regret. Lydia prattled on, utterly oblivious, about an invitation from Mrs. Forster to accompany her to Brighton. A mere scrap of gossip, you might think, yet Elizabeth felt a distinct shiver of foreboding, a faint discord in the seemingly harmonious melody of their lives. Brighton, she knew, was a hotbed of frivolity, and Lydia, alas, was a moth drawn to the flame. Then came the news that truly shook Elizabeth to her core. Not a whisper, but a pronouncement, delivered with a mix of triumph and apology by a flustered Sir William Lucas. Mr. Collins, that very same Mr. Collins who had but days ago declared his affections for her Elizabeth Bennet, was now engaged to Charlotte Lucas. The world, Elizabeth felt, had spun off its axis. Her mind reeled. Charlotte, her sensible, practical, unassuming friend. To that man? It was an absurdity beyond comprehension. She hurried to Lucas Lodge, her heart heavy with a peculiar mix of dread and disbelief. She found Charlotte in surprisingly good spirits, if a little subdued. The air crackled with unspoken questions, with the weight of this unforeseen alliance. "My dear Charlotte," Elizabeth began, her voice barely a whisper, "can this truly be so?" Charlotte, ever the pragmatist, met her gaze with a quiet resolve. "It is so, Lizzie. I am to be married." There was no girlish glee, no blushing timidity, only a stark, unwavering acceptance. She then laid bare her reasoning, a chillingly logical explanation that pierced Elizabeth's romantic sensibilities like an icicle. "I am not romantic, you know, Lizzie. I never have been. I ask only for a comfortable home, and considering Mr. Collins's character, connections and situation in life, I am convinced that my chance of happiness with him is as fair as most people can boast on entering the marriage state." Elizabeth listened, utterly aghast. "Happiness in marriage is entirely a matter of chance," Charlotte continued. "If the dispositions of the parties are ever so well known to each other, or ever so similar beforehand, it does not advance their felicity in the least. They always grow sufficiently unlike afterwards to have their share of vexation, and it is better to know as little as possible of the defects of the person with whom you are to pass your life. A profound silence descended, broken only by the crackle of the hearth. Elizabeth could not fathom such cold, calculated logic. Her vision of marriage, born of mutual affection and esteem, shattered against the hard rock of Charlotte's pragmatism. Pity warred with a grim sort of admiration for her friend's fortitude. Charlotte, at 27, knew the grim realities of a single woman's prospects. A home, security, a place in society, these were the tangible benefits she grasped, even if affection remained an elusive dream. It was a stark, sobering lesson for Elizabeth. The world, she was learning, did not always bend to the ideals of love and romantic passion. Sometimes, indeed often, it demanded a different kind of compromise, a quieter resignation to the exigencies of life. And in that quiet moment at Luca's lodge, Elizabeth felt a profound sadness, not just for Charlotte, but for the universal truth of limited choices that lay hidden beneath the glittering surface of genteel society. The very idea of happily ever after now seemed to carry a question mark, shadowed by the stark, practical realities of existence. Chapter 22, unpacking the title Pride and Prejudice. The air in Longbourn, already thick with the scent of Mrs. Bennet's perpetual agitation, curdled further that morning. Mr. Collins, having meticulously rehearsed his proposal, a speech admirable in its length, if not its sentiment, stood utterly confounded. Elizabeth, with a resolve that would later define her, had refused him, not once but thrice, each no echoing a deeper conviction than the last. He, Mr. Collins, a man of such connections, such prospects, such gravity simply could not comprehend it. His pride, inflated by Lady Catherine's patronage and his own self-importance, had crashed against the unyielding rock of Elizabeth's self-respect. Refused. My daughter refused a clergyman with excellent prospects. Mrs. Bennet's shriek was a masterpiece of maternal despair, a sound that could curdle milk. Her world, already precarious, now threatened to topple entirely. Here, we see the prejudice of her age, of her station, blinding her to anything but the most advantageous match. For her, Elizabeth's refusal was not an act of integrity, but of ruinous folly, born of some inexplicable, stubborn pride. You will not speak to me again, Elizabeth, if you do not marry Mr. Collins. A mother's love, twisted by societal pressures and a desperate need for security, became a weapon. Elizabeth, however, stood her ground. Her pride was not of the boastful sort, but a fierce, quiet assertion of her own worth and desires. She would not sacrifice her happiness for a roof over her head, nor would she feign affection where none existed. She possessed a keen prejudice against hypocrisy and a deep-seated belief in genuine connection, a stark contrast to her mother's blind adherence to convention. It was into this domestic maelstrom that Mr. Bennet, surprisingly, stepped. With a dry wit that was his only armor against the absurdities of life, he declared, "An unhappy alternative is before you, Elizabeth. From this day you must be a stranger to one of your parents. Your mother will never see you again if you do not marry Mr. Collins, and I will never see you again if you do." His pronouncement, delivered with perfect comic timing, was a beacon of sanity. It championed Elizabeth's independence, validating her pride in her judgment, and dismissing the social prejudice that sought to corner her. He understood the value of a spirited mind over a convenient match. The household became a battlefield of wills. Mr. Collins, though wounded in his pompous pride, was not one to linger in despair. His affection, never profound, was remarkably transferable. Charlotte Lucas, visiting amidst the tempest, observed the unfolding drama with her characteristic quiet discernment. She saw Elizabeth's principled pride, Mrs. Bennet's frantic prejudice, and the pragmatic reality of their situation. The seeds of a new, unexpected match began to germinate, as Mr. Collins, ever quick to recover from a minor setback to his ego, cast his eyes towards a less obstinate target. The very foundations of the Bennets' home, shaken by this episode of personal pride clashing with social prejudice, unknowingly set the stage for another, far more startling resolution to a different form of compromise. Chapter 23. The modern Miss Bennet. A strange calm preceded a domestic storm at Longbourn the morning after the Netherfield ball. Mr. Collins, swelling with a self-important mission, requested a private audience with Miss Elizabeth, intending to bestow his hand upon her. "My dear Miss Elizabeth, I have been contemplating matrimony. My reasons are threefold: duty as a clergyman, Lady Catherine de Bourgh's advice, and to mitigate entailment by uniting with your family. Therefore, I have fixed my choice upon you. I am persuaded your modest objections are but the charming delicacy of your sex, and I am not to be deterred by a first, or even second, refusal." Elizabeth, between amusement and growing vexation, replied, "Indeed, Mr. Collins, I am sensible of your attention, but I am perfectly serious in my refusal. I am ill qualified to make you happy, and I am the last woman who could make herself agreeable to you. My feelings are very far from wishing to marry you." He smiled unconvinced. "My dear cousin, such modesty is becoming, but I am not to be trifled with. Your mother's wishes, as I heard her express, point differently. I assure you I shall make you an excellent husband." "You are mistaken, Mr. Collins," Elizabeth insisted, her tone firming. "I am perfectly serious. My answer is, and will always be, no." Only then did her words pierce his self-regard. His complacent face contorted into stunned offense. "I understand you, Miss Elizabeth," he declared, rising stiffly. "Your resolution is imprudent and irrational. I shall, of course, withdraw my suit." With a stiff bow he retreated, dignity bruised. The immediate aftermath was a hurricane. Mrs. Bennet, divining the refusal, burst into the drawing room, crimson with fury. "Elizabeth," refused Mr. Collins, "you are mad! You shall marry him! I will not have a daughter throw away such an establishment. If you do not, I will never speak to you again." Elizabeth, pale but resolute, stood her ground. "Mother, I cannot marry a man I do not respect." "Nonsense! Your father shall make you marry him?" she shrieked, dragging Mr. Bennet into the fray. Mr. Bennet, observing the storm, finally intervened. He looked from his distraught wife to his steadfast daughter. "Elizabeth," he began, "affirm. Your mother insists upon your marrying Mr. Collins, and I insist on your refusing him. From this day you must be a stranger to one parent. Your mother will never see you again if you do not, and I will never see you again if you do." A faint, wry smile played upon his lips. The house remained in disarray. Mr. Collins, recovering from his slight, sought solace and a more amenable wife at Luca's lodge. Elizabeth, though shaken, felt profound relief. She had chosen independence, a path fraught with uncertainty, yet preserving her integrity. In a world measuring a woman's value by marital status, Miss Elizabeth Bennet proved herself remarkably modern, unwilling to sacrifice her heart for convenience or expectation. Her future remained unwritten, but for now, she had asserted her right to define it. Your 7-day Pemberley action plan. Welcome, dear reader, to a journey not merely through pages, but into the very fabric of your own unfolding story. For too long, perhaps, have we been content to merely observe the societal dance of Meryton or the grand estates of Netherfield and Pemberley. Now it is your turn to step onto the stage, not as an audience member, but as the protagonist of your own magnificent narrative. Our compass, the timeless wisdom of Jane Austen. Our destination, your own Pemberley, that place of profound self-understanding, genuine connection, and unshakable inner peace, built not of stone and acreage, but of character and insight. This is your 7-day quest to cultivate the essence of Pemberley within. Day 1. The Mirror of Meryton. Recall the bustling assembly at Meryton, where first impressions, often flawed, dictated initial judgments. Today, we begin with the mirror, not merely to adjust your appearance, but to scrutinize your self-perception. How do you present yourself? With Elizabeth's vivacity, Jane's quiet grace, or perhaps a hint of Mrs. Bennet's anxieties? More crucially, how do you perceive yourself truly? Are you quick to dismiss your virtues, or inflate minor flaws? Note these initial impressions, both external and internal. Day 2. The Whisper of Wickham. The seductive narrative of Mr. Wickham proved how easily we can be swayed by charm and superficiality. Today, challenge your ingrained prejudices. Consider a person or situation you've readily dismissed. What assumptions underpin your view? Deliberately seek out a deeper, less obvious truth. Perhaps, like Elizabeth, you'll discover a more complex reality beneath the surface, revealing layers you'd previously ignored. Day 3. The Grace of Netherfield. Jane Bennet embodied genuine kindness and empathy, a serene presence amidst chaos. Today, practice cultivating this grace. Engage in active listening, truly hearing without forming an immediate rebuttal. Offer unbiased observation. Extend a thoughtful gesture, however small, to someone unexpected. Observe how your quiet attentiveness can shift the atmosphere around you, drawing sincerity closer. Day 4. The Grandeur of Rosings. Lady Catherine de Bourgh, for all her hubris, exemplified a powerful, albeit misguided, sense of conviction. Today, focus on discerning your true values, those non-negotiable pillars of your personal Pemberley. What principles do you stand firm upon? What defines your integrity? Articulate one such core value, and consider how you might defend it with polite but unyielding grace, much as Elizabeth did at Rosings. Stresk Day 5. The letter from Hunsford Specht. Darcy's infamous letter, though initially hurtful, became a catalyst for Elizabeth's crucial introspection. Today, engage in honest communication, first with yourself. Reflect on a past misunderstanding or difficult conversation. What was your role? Where could clearer expression or deeper listening have altered the outcome? Write down your reflections, without judgment, seeking clarity and understanding. Ask Day 6. The journey to Lambton. Strisk Elizabeth's visit to Pemberley, seeing Darcy's estate and engaging with his housekeeper, transformed her understanding of him. Today, revisit a place, idea, or even a past version of yourself with fresh eyes. Acknowledge growth, forgive past selves or others for perceived wrongs. Seek out the often unseen facets of character that reveal true depth, just as Elizabeth discovered Darcy's genuine benevolence. Astreg's Day 7. The gates of Pemberley. Dusk. You have journeyed through self-reflection, challenged prejudice, cultivated grace, defined your values, fostered honest communication, and acknowledged growth. Today, step through the gates of your own Pemberley. What does this internal estate feel like? What beautiful qualities reside within? How will you maintain its grounds of integrity and connection? This is not an end, but the glorious beginning of a life lived with profound purpose and genuine self-worth. Your personal Pemberley, carefully built, thoughtfully maintained, and eternally cherished. Go forth and inhabit your Pemberley. Summary: 3 truths universally acknowledged. My dear friends, gather closer and let us peer into the exquisite tapestry woven by Jane Austen, particularly that shimmering thread of insight she offers us at the very outset of Pride and Prejudice. She begins with a pronouncement, delivered with such an air of unshakable certainty, that one might imagine it etched into the very fabric of society. Acknowledged by every maiden aunt and gossiping neighbor alike, it is a truth universally acknowledged, that a single man in possession of a good fortune must be in want of a wife. Ah, but isn't that a delightful turn of phrase? So elegant, so poised, yet beneath its polished surface lies a current, swift and deep, that truly propels the entire narrative. For while the gentleman of fortune might indeed be to desire a wife, the real, undeniable truth, the unspoken echo of that first proclamation, is that a young woman of respectable, yet modest, means and her family, for that matter, must, with an almost desperate urgency, be in want of that very man. You see, in a world where a lady's prospects were tethered to the availability of a suitable husband, where property laws and societal expectations conspired to make independence a distant, often impossible dream, marriage wasn't merely a romantic aspiration. It was an economic imperative, a strategic alliance, a matter of survival and, dare I say, the maintenance of one's delicate position in the social hierarchy. This truth, then, isn't just about love, it's about the relentless pursuit of security, the delicate dance of social maneuvering, and the often comic desperation lurking beneath the polite bows and curtsies. It is the engine of the story, setting hearts fluttering, tongues wagging, and carriages rumbling towards grand estates. But let us not stop there, for woven into the very next strands of our tale is another truth, equally profound, though perhaps less overtly stated: the truth of first impressions, and how terribly, spectacularly, wonderfully wrong they can often be. Oh, the human tendency to judge by the cover, to take a handsome face, a charming smile, or a stern countenance, and paint an entire character portrait upon such flimsy canvas. How many misunderstandings, how much heartache, how many impassioned arguments could be avoided, were we but to hold our judgments in check, allowing the layers of character to unfold like petals in the sun. One might mistake quiet reserve for arrogance, or outward pleasantry for genuine virtue. This truth warns us against the seductive power of superficiality, gently chiding us to look beyond the immediate glare of pride or the knee-jerk reaction of prejudice, reminding us that genuine understanding is a treasure earned through patience and observation, not a gift bestowed upon a casual glance. It's the silent argument running through every ballroom and drawing room, challenging us to question what our eyes think they see. And finally, my friends, a third truth emerges, perhaps the most comforting and transformative of all: the truth that self-awareness, humility, and the courage to change one's mind are the true pathways to happiness and genuine connection. For it is not enough to secure a husband or to merely navigate the perilous waters of social judgment. True fulfillment, the kind that lasts beyond the wedding day and endures through life's trials, requires a willingness to examine one's own heart, to admit one's follies, and to grow. The proud must learn humility, the prejudiced must learn openness, and both must learn to value character over consequence, genuine affection over societal gain. When the dust settles from all the misunderstandings, the misjudgments, and the myriad social embarrassments, what remains is the profound realization that love, real love, the kind that blossoms from mutual respect and shared understanding, is a choice made not only of the heart but of a matured and reflective mind. It is the willingness to see beyond the glittering facade, to forgive past wrongs, and to embrace a future built on honesty and genuine esteem that ultimately leads to the most treasured of unions. And is that not a truth worth acknowledging, universally and forevermore?